Hello and welcome to Africa Today. I am Mike Okwoche. It must have been a busy weekend made of hotel checkouts, long drive through the city, and then chit-chatting at the departure lounge of the Abuja airport. This was after Nigeria's capital city played host to almost 1,000 delegates last week. Two recent bomb blasts and the kidnapping of more than 200 girls in the northeast part of the country did little to deter global investors, heads of states and policymakers from attending the 24th World Economic Forum on Africa. Now, organizers say the 2014 summit was set out to build on the progress made in South Africa last year when it looked at delivering Africa's promise by exploring ways to forge inclusive growth and create jobs for Africa's growing population. Now that the World Economic Forum brainstorming sessions are over, what do you think is the way out of poverty, insecurity and unemployment in Africa? You can talk to us on Twitter at TVC Africa Today or send an email to africatoday@tvcnews.tv. We'll take this report now, and Africa Today will be right back. Thanks for joining us.
The 24th World Economic Forum on Africa, an international gathering determined to make the continent's economic growth more inclusive. China, a major international trading partner with the continent, is represented here by its leader. The country makes known more investment project commitments to Africa. It says they come with no strings attached.
China proposes a China-Africa Regional Aviation Cooperation Plan by setting up aviation joint ventures, providing civilian feeder jets, training aviation professionals, and building supporting facilities. We will promote the regional aviation industry in Africa.
The Nigerian government receives the Chinese expression of investment interest with joy. It is positive the proposed areas of economic involvement will help drive its existing growth efforts further.
For us in Nigeria, job creation has been the main focus of our ongoing transformation agenda, which is a program to mobilize and diversify the Nigerian economy. Job creation has been one of the concerns that keeps me up at night.
The international community, however, cautions Africa to improving governance, which is critical to development, regardless of foreign investment inflow.
Creation of a good health system, and I could go on and on. You find all those facets reflected in the book. And I would underline particularly the need for good governance and best practices.
The 24th World Economic Forum on Africa strives to ensure that gains from economic growth on the continent are enjoyed by all of its teeming population and can also be sustained.
All right, thank you for staying with us. Since 1990, this is the first time Nigeria is hosting the World Economic Forum, as other editions have always held in South Africa, except in 5 occasions where it took place in Zimbabwe, Namibia, Mozambique, Tanzania and Ethiopia. Now joining us on the show to review the 2014 World Economic Forum is Mashood Fashola, a lecturer and an economist. You're welcome to Africa Today.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
Right, and then we have Samuel Issa, a public affairs analyst, on the show today. You're welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Thank you. And meanwhile, Uche Igwe, a London-based doctorate researcher who was at the forum, will be contributing to the discussion on phone as we make progress. Now, let's start it this way, and I'll start with you. The last edition that took place at the World Economic Forum in South Africa focused on inclusive growth and talking about job creation. What's your assessment of that 1 year after?
As a matter of fact, it's not possible to create jobs with modern industrial development.
All right.
It's essentially capital intensive. A lot of automation is going on in the modern industry. So we have to consciously create jobs using other means. For instance, we can create jobs through agriculture. We can employ millions of Nigerian youth to be growing trees to arrest deforestation. We have to be ingenious about job creation. As a matter of fact, it's not a difficult matter because when you create jobs, you have to give wages, and the worker will use the wages to buy just food, have an apartment, move about. Those are wage goods which can be created cheaply. It doesn't cost anything. Even if you are not able...
From the assessment, would you say that the last World Economic Forum they held in South Africa was a success based on job creation?
No. It's not a success because unemployment is growing in the world. Okay? Unemployment is growing in the world. The government has to be involved, government at all levels. Left to the private sector, you cannot expect more jobs to be created. You cannot.
Okay. Now, we'll come back to this. Let me come to you. Now, Africa is let me say, is the richest continent when it comes to natural resources, diverse variety of natural resources and so on. But the continent is still very, or maybe seen as one of the poorest, as the case may be. Why is it so difficult to translate all that resources into wealth for the people?
Thank you very much. Africa is very rich in terms of mineral composition. And I think this has been from time immemorial, not just now. At a time, Europe, America were coming to Africa to poach labor, slavery. We take people away. At another time, the Europeans came, they divided Africa. They came under the auspices of modern government, democracy, and security. And they were cutting away our natural resources, our cocoa, our palm kernel, the produce were taken away, in exchange for peanut. So Africa is really rich. And recently, you discovered that oil deposit, crude, we have vast in Africa. New countries are now joining the league of OPEC, joining the league of oil producing countries like Nigeria. Ghana is joining, the Southern East Africa is joining, other countries are joining. Even this South Sudan, that there is water on. We have a discovering of more feeds. So Africa is very rich. But then, you see, the system we operate in Africa, perhaps the system of government we operate and the economic power is skewed towards a few. You can have 5% is holding about 90% of the weight, while the remaining 95% are sharing only 10%. So generally, the average income is poor, it's very low. So that is why when it comes to poverty line, Africa is seen as the limelight in the poverty line.
Okay, we'll come to this. Now, we have via phone Uche Igwe, a London-based doctorate researcher. He was at the just concluded World Economic Forum held in Abuja. Uche, you're welcome to Africa Today. Now, what were some of the key issues that the World Economic Forum focused on that is of interest to Africans?
Well, Africa, as you know, at the moment, is thinking about inclusive growth and job creation, and that's most of the conversations around the World Economic Forum dealt with all of that. So I think that the World Economic Forum also is happening at a good time because, very interesting time, because the security challenges in the country brought up important issues for Africa to consider, because there cannot be inclusive growth unless there's private sector involvement, and private sector cannot be involved unless there is security. So, nice meeting, nice promises, but it's important that African governments begin to deal with the issues on ground. For instance, in Nigeria, insecurity, which is the biggest deterrent of foreign direct investment, is one of the issues bedeviling the country, and by implication the continent at the moment. And it's something that for us to achieve the kind of very ambitious promises at the World Economic Forum, that means that we need to recalibrate the security dynamics.
All right. Now, the African continent continues to catch the attention of the developed world, but it has not been able to maximize its potentials. Why is it so difficult for the continent?
I think the important thing is to emphasize that the problem of Africa is good governance. So the countries in Africa who are witnessing growth, like Nigeria, Angola, are countries that are highly dependent on natural resources. And these natural resources are going to be depleted. And what is the challenge is that, first of all, African governments must develop a kind of governance architecture to take the greatest advantage of the natural resource endowment of Africa, which is not happening at the moment, and also begin to think about putting in place a enabling environment to jumpstart an economy that is less and less dependent on natural resources. I think that this is a very critical step that needs to be taken, and I think that unless and until African governments deliberately begin to put structures of good governance, begin to develop quantum infrastructure, it will be really difficult to take the economy from a natural resource-driven economy to an economy that is broader and that does not depend on natural resources.
All right, thank you very much, Uche. We'll still come back to you again after a little while. Thank you. All right, Mashood, let me come to you. As a foreign investor, or let me put it this way, we often hear African leaders calling for foreign investment, people, companies, other countries of the West, please come to Africa to invest and so on. But what are the issues that a foreign company, for instance, would consider in Africa conducive for an investment?
Yes, thank you. First and foremost, you will consider political instability.
Okay.
There's no other way out. We consider security to life and property. We also consider other costs of infrastructure, like transportation. For instance, Nigeria is the only large country in the world that does not have an efficient railway system. You want to convey goods from north to south, east to west, it costs hours and very expensive. You want to travel from Lagos to Abuja, it will cost 20,000, 30,000 naira. If you had efficient modern railway, it should not cost more than 3,000 naira. Okay? So transportation costs makes it unfavorable for anyone to set up business in Nigeria. However,
but Nigeria is not the only African country. There are other countries. For instance, we have Swaziland, Lesotho that are seen, or even Namibia that are seen as relatively very stable. Are they being able to attract that kind of investment?
Those are small countries. We need to compare Nigeria with big countries like South Africa, Egypt, Ethiopia, Kenya. You see, these countries have better energy, more efficient energy, cheaper transportation system, and then security.
Okay.
But the industries, in fact, no business or company in Nigeria, when you look at the cost of production, it's too high for them to be competitive.
Okay, let me ask more on this. The point there is the leaders, he talked about the fact that there has to be stability, relative stability and so on. But the leaders that are making this call for foreigners to come invest in their countries, are they not aware that they have to put their home in order or put their home together before these investors come in, for instance?
Of course, they know. And I think henceforth, you cannot hide behind one finger. You know, the world is a global village. So our leaders should begin to behave in a way that people will see them that they are doing well, good governance. Because good governance guarantees political stability.
Okay.
But when there is no good governance, when people are ruling using lies, you cannot hide it forever. So, like if you take Ghana now, you can see relatively there is stability in Ghana. Ghana is West Africa sub-region. It's the recent country where democracy is thriving, where a ruling president lost an election, for the opposition
Exactly.
party. So there is relative stability and there is relative security. And investment are moving there. Some companies close there in Nigeria and move to Ghana. So we begin, the World Economic Forum coming to Nigeria is a blessing. Being the largest in population. I don't want to be controversial now.
Okay.
Being the largest in population in Africa and being the largest economy in Africa, the West Africa sub-region. It's good that I came to Nigeria this time. It's critically, it highlights insecurity. The whole world focus on Nigeria. Particularly what is happening in the north, to the extent that our government, they were unable, what they wanted to calm down. The whole world brought it out that, look, you can't just take this gas and just go like that. You know, one thing in the World Economic Forum, Gordon Brown, with some British private investors, put $10 million on the table for security in 500 schools in northern Nigeria.
It's okay.
It's a message.
It's all right. We'll come back to this. Now, many say Africa is rising and the continent's economic resurgence has been forecast to continue with the projected growth of 5.5% in 2014 if there are no insurgent attacks like the one in Nigeria. But the question is, how would this translate into inclusive growth and jobs? We'll go on a quick break, and Africa Today will be right back. Stay with us. Now, the recent World Economic Forum on Africa is believed to have attracted over $68 billion in investment to the African continent. Now, already over $20 billion, and that's about the 3 trillion naira, has been realized as part of foreign direct investment into Nigerian economy. That's for Nigeria alone. Let me come to you directly. We're talking about foreign investment here. How does this translate into the standard of living for the average African, for instance?
Well, I think the foreign investment may want to start with infrastructure, okay? And they are doing a lot in that respect. But it cannot translate into quality of life for the generality of the people unless you ensure jobs are created. As I said before, you can't expect private sector to create jobs. I'm being driven by profit. And sometimes I prefer automation rather than hire people.
But someone will say, some analysts will say, jobs created by government is not necessarily productive to the economy because you just have people and pay them.
Thank you very much indeed. It's productive in the sense that it will spread welfare, well-being, and stability. It will create market. You know, the rich buy a lot from foreign countries. The poor people patronize small domestic production. When you give people money, it's not unproductive. They will generate demand and will stimulate the economy.
But also increase inflation.
No, thank you very much. That's why I come. If you improve agriculture massively, food price can never get up. You see Europe. Europe is overproducing food. Workers are going to use the money to buy food, to rent apartments, to go on transportation. Once you have addressed supply in those areas, adequate transportation, housing, food production, there will be no inflation. And then the workers will now use their savings to patronize the industries. Where would the industry have? We have a large population. Okay? Once they are able to buy, it will stimulate economic development. So even look at what Keynes said. Says, okay, give contracts to some people to dig ground, give money to some people to fill it up. To generate demand.
But how sustainable is that? Because the point there is,
yes,
if someone is involved in digging, or you in your establishment earlier on, you talked about planting of trees, for instance. By the time you finish planting trees and you're paid for planting trees, you're still going to go hungry.
No, it does not stop. There are so many things you can do to create jobs. When you plant trees, you have to maintain them. You have to weed things. It's continuous. And you know that Europe gives subsistence allowance, unemployment allowance to millions of people, okay? And they buy goods in the market, okay? So the job creation is not just for productivity growth alone, but for inclusive growth, so that the growth, he said, 5% of people corner 90% of income. We want to spend this income, that's inclusive growth. Okay. These people will use part of their savings to create small enterprises. You will thereby promote medium, small, and micro enterprises. Well, these people will be able to save some money and start some small jobs. Okay. I just mentioned forestry as one way to create jobs. There are so many others like cleaning services, agriculture, so many areas by which you can create jobs at local government level, state level, federal level.
Okay. Now, the focus, insecurity, or maybe security, was one of the major focus of this World Economic Forum. Now, what's the impact of the issues of security to investment on the continent right now?
Of course, security is very crucial. Well, after political stability, the next thing is security. If there is no security, foreigners will not come in. Even at home, even we here, we will not be able to generate employment. So security is very crucial to growth and development.
Okay.
Not only growth, to growth and development. And look at the whole world focus on Nigeria during this World Economic Forum. Do you know that Abuja was closed down because of the fear of attack? They brought in maximum force, over 5,000 security men in Abuja. Civil servants stayed at home. So you can imagine the impact of that. So if we are able to have a safe environment, you can imagine the impact of the amount used of security in our budget. But if you have a safe environment, those amounts will be channeled to growth. Like what he has said, every economy, you look at your natural endowment. You start from the base. In Nigeria, agriculture is our natural endowment. So, first of all, if you want to create jobs, I believe that government has little to do. It's private sector initiative. Okay. Like you see the China model. They encourage small-scale family businesses. That's what is growing. What government does is to provide infrastructure, provide fund, provide enabling environment.
And the others will take care of themselves.
The of food we are eating in Nigeria are planted, grown, and sustained by private sector, like the yams, like the onions. Where is the government farm? But government should create environment, enabling environment, and also encourage private sector participation. So that is what I feel, the China model, that will create employment. Government on its own cannot begin to create employment. Look at our budget structure, for instance. Our budget structure as of today, 80% is being spent on the current expenditure, only 20% on capital expenditure, because government want to employ. That is awkward. Very awkward in the sense that we don't have a chunk amount of our income to spend on infrastructure. So government should diverge from creating employment directly. Encourage, have more money for infrastructure, because it's the infrastructure that drives the GDP. For example, you are telling me the GDP is up. Why is it, like you mentioned, road network? Road network to transport goods in Nigeria is very expensive. Then interconnectivity on African continent. It is cheaper and faster to travel from Senegal to Paris than to travel from Senegal to Johannesburg. So these are the things we have to look at in Africa. So that we have to, it is also, it's easier to convertibility of currency to foreign currency
than to African
currency. So there is no inter-African trade. It's low. I mean, we have to go through Europe or go through America before we trade with ourselves. And you know what happens? That is, we are losing a lot of income.
It's okay. You are itching to say something. Could you just in 1 minute as you
I don't agree that it's employment that is costing the high recurrent expenditure. There's a lot of wasteful spending.
What wasteful spending?
Yes, embezzlement, misappropriation.
We know, but that
look at security, for instance. Look at security, for instance. We need to employ a large number of police officers. It is not private sector that will employ police officers. We have too few policemen to police Nigeria. You can create employment with a lot of police officers, army personnel, and so on and so forth. We have
but what do you think when you're taking people off the streets and giving them money in the name of employment, and it doesn't translate into productivity?
No. It will, because you have a crisis now. Two vehicles hit each other. You see no police officer to come and intervene. They start to fight each other. Two people start to fight each other. Nobody to intervene. No policeman to settle the quarrel. It will degenerate. So the government needs to employ a lot of police officers, army personnel, to ensure security. That's one area. Then the government needs to invest a lot in infrastructure. In so doing, you will generate employment as well, like the railway, the channelizing the waters, a lot of infrastructure, energy. It will create jobs that thereby. Many governments are handling construction works, isn't it? They're giving contracts to contractors. Contractors are employing. It's direct creation of jobs by government. What I said, you have to promote medium, small, and micro enterprises as well. So we have to consciously create jobs, either directly or indirectly. That is not the one causing problem of high recurrent expenditure against capital expenditure. What's causing the problem is misappropriation, embezzlement. You know how many billions are stolen, stuck abroad? It's not workers, it's not employment.
It's right. Then again, like what he said, if you go back to the deep to the Great Depression in Britain in the 30s, when John Maynard Keynes came up. He now said, when you are trying to introduce policies on expedition, but you are not encouraging consumption. So if the income is more distributed, it must fairly distributed, like the 50-50, like 80% of the population having 50%, then you stimulate the marginal propensity to consume. Then when you stimulate the marginal propensity to consume, the economy will grow.
Okay. Thank you very much, Samuelisa, for coming on the program. Mashood Fashola, thank you for coming.
You're welcome.
And Uche Igwe, who joined us earlier on, even though we couldn't re-establish links with him, he was at the World Economic Forum earlier on. Thank you for joining us as well. Now, Nigeria, Africa's most populous country with over 170 million people, play a crucial role in the continent's economic growth. And like other African countries, it is faced with the challenges of poor infrastructure, insecurity and unemployment as it struggles to utilize its natural wealth in solving social challenges. Now, the World Economic Forum may have ended with high hopes, but Africans still not stop demanding for the basic necessities of life from their leaders until the system works for the man on the streets. That's our show for today. You can watch episodes of the show on youtube.com/TVC Africa Today. Until we'll come your way again, I am Mike Okwoche. And remember, this is Africa. Bye for now.